Doctors Without Borders has teamed up with a photographer to highlight how the conflict in the Central African Republic has affected the lives of millions of people. In a documentary titled The Events, families look at the trail of destruction left by the Third Civil War. Adrienne Surprenant is a photographer at MYOP and joins us now to discuss this project. Adrienne, thank you very much for availing yourself this morning. How did it come about that you got involved in this project?
So I had already worked with MSF in the Central African Republic because I was living and working there for 3 years in the past. And I had worked on a project on trauma, so I was familiar with the problematics. And as the project wanted to tell the story of the conflict, of the 10 years of conflict, and of its impact on families, it was like a need for very intimate interviews, for very long and detailed conversations to really see like the human impact of all those political and political events.
What did you know about the Central African Republic before you went there? And in responding to that, what you read about, what you thought you knew, did anything prepare you for what you found on the ground?
So the first time I went to the Central African Republic was in 2017. And at that time, the conflict had evolved from like mainly the capital to all the provinces. And so the capital was still tense, and the provinces were mainly occupied by armed groups at the time. And when I went now recently for Doctors Without Borders, I think what had evolved and what I was surprised and gladly surprised to see was that there was globally a bit more stability and calm. So, I mean, I could see that the situation had evolved. There were some neighborhoods or some places that people would more easily go to than before. And you could feel that something had a bit relaxed in the country. But there is still issues and still always this sort of like risk hanging of a renewal in violences.
What stories stuck with you?
Many of them. I think one of the stories that moved me the most was that of Muhammad, who was in so he was in Mangasu, which is a town that I had visited multiple times to photograph various reportage. And he moved me because he was really insisting all throughout the interview on the fact that for him the most important was to save his children, that he was ready to die if it would mean that his children would be safe. And when he flew, that was all he had in mind. And when I met him for Doctors Without Borders in Bangui, I had access to basically his whole family. I went inside the house. I saw the kids play together. So it was like children and grandchildren of Muhammad. And I just had his interview in mind where he was saying I was ready to die for them to survive. And I could see in the way the family interacted how much love and exchange there was between all of them, how much caring. So I think that was really moving to witness those moments of family love after all they had been through.
What happens now? The documentary was commissioned in the name of what? Is it raising awareness?
I think every time we do this work as journalists, as photographers, and Doctors Without Borders, the goal is always to raise awareness. So the conflict in the Central African Republic has been going on for the past 10 years. It is often forgotten that it is still happening, and I think it is important to see what people from there have to say about it, about how it impacted their lives, because that might just be able to make a bridge between their realities and the realities of those that can watch the documentary. It's a way to create some kind of dialogue between two completely different realities and make us care about each other.
And these are people, right? So you speak of the story of Muhammad and him talking about how he would lay his life on the line just so that he can protect his family. Perhaps some of the other human interest elements that you can tell us about. As you say, we are speaking not just numbers or not just a story and reporting on actual human beings that go through some of the most difficult circumstances, yet they still stand. How?
I mean, I think a lot of them do stand because of the people they care about. Mohammed's story is not the only one of that kind. There was Hassania, who lost one of her sons, and she wanted to, literally, she wanted to die, or she felt half dead after the burial of her son, especially that she had to mourn alone because the conflict was still ongoing and very strong at that moment. And she was saying that what kept her going was the rest of her children and the rest of her family. And so you could see that, people do think and care a lot about the others that are around them, and I think that gives strength in moments of crisis.
Thank you very much, Adrienne Surprenant. She's a photographer, having done that documentary with Doctors Without Borders on the conflict in the Central African Republic, taking a look at the people at the center of that conflict.